Before beginning my journey of starting out with my business and building something, I had this huge dilemma of whether this will work out. And I was really confused. Like, how do you test whether something like this will work out? How do you know for sure? Because so many businesses fail. That's when I came across these 7 laws that literally changed my perspective when it came to business. Now, power can be closely related to value proposition, which is something you've probably heard about a lot, right? People talk about the amount of value that your product brings to the market or your service brings to the market or its customers. Everybody throws this term out a lot, like value proposition. What is your value proposition? What is your value proposition? But what really defines a value proposition? Like, what makes you stand out from the crowd? What makes you differentiate from the rest of the businesses that are in the market? Think of these 7 laws or these 7 principles as a guideline for you to know whether your business has any value proposition at all. Most successful businesses have multiple of these. We look into that also once I dive through each one of the examples. I'll be mentioning examples of businesses that had one or two or many of these simultaneously. Now, mind you, although these principles can act as really solid guidelines, I must mention clearly they're just that. They're just guidelines. There are a lot of different things that can be involved and factors that need to be taken into consideration when a business makes it big or not. But these things, it's just something good to lean back on, because I can tell you, I felt very underconfident in starting something out 3 months ago. But after reading this book in a week, I feel much better and I feel like I at least have something to lean back on. Also, the book that I'm talking about is Hamilton Helmer's 7 Powers. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing his name, but it's basically a book about business and strategy and all of those sexy things. Now, let's get right into the 7 powers or the 7 laws. So, the first one is scale economies. Now, what is scale economies? Scale economies is basically the bigger you are, the more power you have and the more leverage you have over your customers. What that means is, for example, Flipkart can charge much lower for their delivery, for their logistics, and all of the back end work that's required for them to deliver a product from A to B. Simply because they have a lot of scale, like they do it at such large quantity. Like from Flipkart, it's not just 2 people that are ordering, it's millions of people every single day. And that's not the same if you start a business. If you were to start a business tomorrow, can you create that sort of power? Because if you were compete against Flipkart, Flipkart can just crush you like this by reducing their price. So when starting out a business, we need to keep scale economies into consideration, whether you can grow the business without having to be crushed by another competitor who can just beat you on scale because of how big they are. Now, the next one is network effects. Okay, network effects is really simple. It has it in the name itself, networking. You can think of any social media platform, but let's think about Uber or any Ola or Namayatri or any of one of those platforms for this example. So what network economies is, it's basically the number of people that join your platform, the better your platform gets. So for every new customer that joins your platform, the bigger your platform grows and the better it gets. How Uber, how Ola, how Namayatri? Well, basically every time a driver registers to be a part of the Uber service and provide service to customers, that means customers have more number of drivers. Now, more number of drivers means more demand for the software or the application. And it just keeps going hand in hand. The number of drivers that keep joining in, the more demand will get resolved. Obviously, until there is a plateau, which might happen at some point. But it's basically that. And social media, which is an obvious example, is for every new user that joins Instagram, that means that the platform has more data. They have more data points and they have more ads to sell and basically more money that they can make. But not only that, if one person joins, his friend is also probably going to join, and these friends can interact with each other, and that's better for the platform because they're socializing on it. That means more people will get curious about it and more people will want to join. And it says it in the name. It's plain and simple network economies. Now, when you're starting out a business, you want to think about ways where you can connect each other in your business. Not just social media platforms do this. It's Zomato, it's your Uber, it's multiple different platforms where basically for every new person that joins, your platform is getting better and is growing in some form or the other. Now, the next one is something that I didn't think about, but it's quite obvious and it makes a lot of sense. And especially if you're a rookie and you're just getting into this stuff, it totally makes sense why you don't know about it. But it's called switching costs. Now, what is switching costs? Think of a big tech company that has been providing CRM software to a company, and they've been doing it for years together. Now, CRM software is customer relationship management. So they basically take data points of how they're interacting with customers and where they could be better and all of those different things. I still don't know the exact depth of it, but surface level, that's what CRM is. And these guys analyze all of that. So they have years together of this data, right? So they have a lot of analysis, a lot of information, a lot of charts, everything that they can give a company. Now, what happens when that company doesn't want to use the CRM service from this software company anymore? What do they do then? So that's where switching costs comes into play, because for this company to switch, it'll probably cost them more or make them more of a loss, because think about it, they don't have any customer relationship data until they switch, and that new firm has all of the data that they've already collected. And mind you, there'll be a lot of problems here and there while doing this transition. So in simple words, they might as well continue doing business with that existing business. Now, a lot of software companies do this because sometimes even the product is bad. Like, there are cases where the software a company is using from a service provider, from a software company, is bad, but they still continue to do it or use it because the cost of switching or cost of choosing to switch to another platform will cost them more than actually having to just stick through and make these guys work. And also, with switching costs, you have advantage with price, because these guys are locked in and they're stuck. You can increase the price because they can never leave. So you have unlimited leverage over the control of your product, which means you can also crush competition. So switching costs is something that's tough to acquire, because you need to have you need to be very deeply involved in the business that you're doing, whether it be B2B or B2C. And once you have create that sort of base or establish that sort of base for yourself, then you have control. So as a new enter, so as somebody new into the market, it's not really very easy to create this, which you will notice with a lot of these laws, except for one, which we're going to be talking about in a second. The next law that we're going to be talking about is branding. Now, I know all of you have probably heard to some degree or not what branding is, how it works from a personal brand standpoint of view, and even from a product point of view. If you haven't, then it's all right. There's nothing wrong in that. But just know that branding is basically the amount of hold that you as a company have over your customers. So think of like Nikes or Apple. Like, they just have this insane amount of control over their customers. Now, branding is something that's built very slowly, and it's a lot of gradual, tiny decisions that are made every day for several years together. It took Apple so many years to penetrate into the Indian market, and it's only doing that now. So you can imagine the amount of tiny decisions and small changes and improvements that they probably have to make to do so. And in a lot of cases, the smallest of mistakes can really hinder a brand. Again, it's the amount of control you have over your customers. So I do agree there is a point where your closest audience, like the ones that are closest to the brand, will still pull through and pull your brand out of a mess, even if you get into it, which we have seen happen with some brands like Starbucks and stuff, for example, which I honestly don't know if they will recover from it, but let's wait and watch. But branding is a steady process. Again, if you're a new company into it, you can start building your brand from the beginning, from the offset itself, which is what I'm doing. Making sure I'm giving a lot of key attention to a lot of the branding elements and what makes us who we are, or in this case right now, me, who I am, or my business, who it is, more importantly. But yeah, paying attention to all these tiny details will not pay off in the next year of business or the next 5 years of business, or maybe even the next 10 years of business. But it's very important to stick to certain brand principles, even from a self-satisfaction point of view, like not just from a business and money point of view, which I know is what at the end of the day matters, but just from a self-satisfaction point of view, knowing that you're staying true to your brand and not doing things that don't align with them. Now, the next thing is the most exciting one, and it's what I believe in to really break into the business scene, or even for any small companies like in the past that have broken conglomerates. What are conglomerates? Conglomerates are basically companies that are diversified into so many sectors that they're huge. Basically, you think of Goliath companies like Google, your Teslas, your Geos, your Tatas. These guys are conglomerates, right? They're on top of the food chain of business, at least, and we're all on the bottom nibbling for crumbs of bread. But those are basically conglomerates. And what is counter positioning? Counter positioning is you basically coming up with a business model that is better than that of the conglomerate. Now, for the conglomerate to match your business model, they might have to drastically change their business, and those will cause tiny fractures in their whole business model, which might over time develop into bigger cracks and end up destroying the entire business. Think about Blockbuster versus Netflix, right? Blockbuster, very commonly used comparison. I couldn't really research into an Indian brand that had this sort of problem, but I'm sure there are many. None that came to the top of my mind or none that I had the time to look into. But Blockbuster and Netflix, a very common comparison where Blockbuster chose to stay their conventional route of selling DVDs and sticking to that whole model, saying that no, DVDs are not going to go anywhere. We're going to keep selling CDs, movies on discs, and that's going to be our business model. But Netflix was like, look, we're going to do things online and we're going to switch things up. You're going to have a website, you sign up, you get a list of movies. And Blockbuster were like, no, you know what? These guys, like, they realized, they saw that the business, there's this new market, there's this new potential, but they were like, no, it's not going to cause a problem to us. Like, we're sorted, we're peace, we don't have to worry about this. And eventually, Netflix's business model with the internet and Blockbuster's business model with CDs, we all know who won at the end of that race, because clearly I don't even know what Blockbuster does anymore. So that's counter positioning. You come up with a business model that has some sort of advantage, be it like in Netflix case, it was the internet. That is a huge advantage. And that's also going to be something that's very similar to one of the next powers that I'm going to be talking about, the last powers, in fact. And no, the second last power is, in fact. But yeah, you come up with a business model where somewhere in that chain of the whole money making loop, you have an advantage over your competitor. So much so for your competitor to have to change things, it'll cause them a lot of problems. Now, Netflix also had a little bit of scale economies because they had already established a user base, and for them to transition onto internet was much easier in comparison to Blockbuster. So there's a little bit of that also. All of these powers, all the big businesses that you can think about, all of them have one of these, or sorry, all of them have multiple of these powers. And the really big ones, that's why they make it so far, because at some way or the other, they've established like multiple facets of power that have differentiated them from the rest of the market. And obviously, there's several different other factors like internet came when Netflix was growing and stuff. But again, those are just ifs and buts. Now, the next one we've got is cornered resource. Cornered research is simply you have valuable access to something, anything. Can be tangible, it can be a software, it can be a product, it can be like oil in Saudi, like a lot of the Middle Eastern countries cases, they had a lot of oil, and because of which they were able to grow with oil money. But obviously they're doing a lot more than that right now. But simply stuff like that, like for Oracle, it was some sort of storage software, which is which is something that I was watching today. I don't remember the exact detail, but they were the first ones to create like this mass storage software on internet, which is through what Amazon, your YouTube, all these big platforms store their content through Oracle software. So they have that cornered resource that nobody else has, nobody else knows how to make, or sometimes if you're fortunate enough to bump into it, then nobody else knows about it. But obviously in today's age, that doesn't happen that often because we've discovered quite a lot. But yeah, cornered resource is basically you just have some sort of advantage over your competitor. This can be similar to counter positioning, but counter positioning is more about the business model and how your business model compares versus them. But cornered resource has more to do with one particular resource. That can be, like I said, software or anything of that sort. Now, process power. This is something that I think I will be obsessed with, and I love the idea of it. I am not the best at executing it yet, but that's the best part about process power. Process power is a company or anything or anyone following a particular process that differentiates them from the rest of the market, which means they're hard to replicate. Like, not everybody can create that process or copy it or anything. And this is again something that takes a lot of time to build, because with processes, with great seamless and effortless processes, there's a lot of refinement and a lot of fine tuning that has to go into it. Like, you need to do the repetitions for you to be able to actually nail your process. And it's the best part about process power is once established, again, after several years of work, it's very hard to copy. Because there was cases, right, where Toyota had all of these great manufacturing plants and in Japan, and because they followed a certain process, they did everything very organized, and their cars were solid. They were known in a certain time period for their longevity, and they were way better than American cars. So the Ford guys in US, they called them over. They were like, "Hey, listen, why don't you guys come? We can do a collaboration thing, and you guys can teach us about your process, how you guys do things." And it'll be win-win for all of us because we'll give you business and blah blah blah. I don't know the exact terms of that agreement, but it went something along those lines. And Toyota went, they tried to recreate their process that they followed in Japan in US. Guess what? It didn't work. They tried different methods, they tried different techniques, they tried for a while even, but it didn't work. It's simply because process power is something that has to develop from the bottom up. You cannot just one fine day expect a business to be process oriented or process driven just because you feel like that's the next best thing to do. It has to start from the bottom up, and it has to be tiny changes, tiny fixes, and making note of those, keeping track of those so that those don't occur again, and then progressing through that and building through it. So yeah, I know I didn't do the best part at explaining all of these. That's because, to be very honest, I haven't got 100% idea of all of it to myself either right now. But to some extent, I've been applying it to thinking about, okay, if I were to do my business, what would be my like counter positioning? What would be my scale economies tactic? And what would I do to create a network economy? All of that has been coming through with that understanding. And I'm not a business background. I am an art student, but I am very excited about starting a business. So I'm really diving nose deep into this. Hopefully, I am going to recreate this video in the future, and I can explain it with a lot more clarity. But that's it. Like, those are the 7 powers. You need to identify at least one of these powers in your business model before you start and let things like go into motion. Simply because otherwise the market is just going to crush you. There's going to be nothing that's going to differentiate your business from somebody else's business. And not to say that that's all you need to succeed as a business, but if somebody were to enter the business like that you're doing, sure, it might be something that's unique or rare, as in nobody else is doing it. But if it's something that's very easily to replicate, then well, it's game over. That's why they say when you build software companies and stuff, make sure that your software is very complex and very dense, so that if somebody were to enter the software scene and try to replicate it, they probably can't, because there's a lot of things that goes behind developing whatever you have. These are all just ideas. They're all just like strategies that can help you. I see business as a game of chess, and although I've never really been any good at chess, not that I've tried really, but chess and war and all of these things, they involve a lot of strategy. So just like that, having some sort of strategy can be an interesting way instead of just going in and flying in blind. And hey, if you have any like interesting stuff that you want to share about business or your insight, if you're somebody that's done anything to make any money or something of that sort in the past year or so, go ahead and share it down in the comments below. It could be interesting, to share ideas and different point of views and interact with each other. Also, where am I with my business? When in my next video, which is something that I might talk about, but it's basically about registering your company. So I have been working on registering my company for the past few days, mostly because it is a necessity more than anything. I didn't necessarily know that I would have to, but I've realized that I do at this point. So I'm going to be going into registering it, and there are different categories, right? You can register as a one-person company, you can register as a private limited, as an LLP, you can register as a partnership, and you can register at all of these different things. It's actually very fun, and I didn't know about it until, well, I realized that I might have to, but it could be interesting for you to know if you ever want to start your own business. So let me know if you guys want me to talk about that. I might talk about it in one of the future videos or the next video. I'm not too sure. We'll figure it out, but it could definitely have some informational and useful stuff for you guys in there. So that's the end of this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys hit that like button if you did, and subscribe to the channel. But that's the end of this video, and I guess I'll see you in the next video. Bye.